you're playing Warhammer 40,000 like it's StarCraft, you're going to lose. So, we're going to talk about how 40k actually works and how to win more games with less effort. If you're anything like me, you love strategy games, you love basically every single base builder that has ever been created, whether it was StarCraft 2, Warcraft 3. They're all freaking amazing. We all love them, but they are very, very different games from Warhammer 40,000. So, let's just break this down and we're going to fix your mindset to get you winning more at Warhammer 40,000. All right, first off that we need to define, we need to figure out what the RTS mentality, real-time strategy mentality is. And I guess it would be more fair to say that the more base builder mentality, even like Dawn of War for Warhammer 40,000, hilariously, is nothing like Warhammer 40,000 on the tabletop. Warhammer 40,000 on the tabletop is actually going to be much more similar to things like chess or even things like Total War Warhammer. There's going to be a much bigger similarity there. So some of the big things that people do in their RTS gaming is they'll do things like they're constantly in action, always trading units. I've done the Zergling rush, or I even rushed with like my normal base builders, like a peon rush, right? And this kind of cause really, really big problems in those RTS scenarios. But in Warhammer 40,000, it can basically just auto lose you the game. One of the big deals that happens in the RTS mindset is you are rewarded for a high APM, or actions per minute. Typically, the busier you are, the more often you're clicking to gather resources, the more often you're clicking to increase your builder queue. This is going to increase your efficiency in the game, and you're going to see a general trend towards winning the game a lot more when you have a higher APM. Not necessarily true for 40k. And then lastly, you've got this whole resource collection and this unit spam kind of mechanism. So there is no actual mechanism for collecting resources or unit spams in 40k. The closest you could get to would be something like, I don't know. Okay, I got it. For like, if you're playing Coterie of the Conceited for Emperor's Children, then you could get kills as your resource that you can then use those to convert into buffs. So that technically does slightly exist in 40k, but if you're thinking in that mindset, it's really going to screw you. And unit spam is almost unheard of outside of some very, very obscure stratagems, which you can't actually spam. So tough. So these things just don't translate into 40,000. If you're relying on them, it's causing a lot of problems. In this video, we're going to fix your mindset. I'm going to teach you exactly what you do need to be focusing on. And you're going to basically instantaneously flip your mind from someone who is thinking about strategy, but you're thinking about the wrong type of strategy, and you're going to become a much better Warhammer 40k player. First things that you got to understand is that there is no resource economy mid-game in Warhammer 40,000. There just isn't. There are limited activations. You can't send your Zerglings over here and bring your Zerglings back, and send your Zerglings over here and bring your Zerglings back. It can't be done, right? The best you can do is you can kind of have some reactive moves for some of your units, which can slightly in a certain way mimic that concept, but it's going to be done in a very different way on the tabletop than what it is on the computer. Then you've got every single unit here is going to be finite, and it really, really matters. You don't have throwaway units. You don't have a unit where you could just say, oh, you know what, I'm just going to keep sending a small squad of Zerglings so that you have to protect this little base. No, you don't have the ability to generate new units. So even your cheap chaff in Warhammer 40,000 are still actually very, very valuable. So even when I am playing, let's say I'm playing Space Marines, okay, and I have units of scouts, which only cost 70 points, they're pretty cheap. They're still extremely valuable for my army. So even if I do choose to expend a unit of scouts, just go say, score me area denial, and accept the fact that my opponent's going to kill them on the swing back, that is a very intentional trade. It is not me throwing a unit away without understanding that I am expending a finite resource. I can't get that unit back. It is gone now, which means now I can no longer use them to screen. Now I can no longer use them to charge chaff. Now I can no longer use them to hold an objective, things like that, right? Time is turn-based, and it's not real time. This is a very, very big deal. You can slow down. Like, I know a lot of people in 40k tend to be worried about how slow they play, but one of the things I see for a lot of people is they play too quickly. Or what happens is they play very slowly, but without intention. So we're going to fix that today. All right. So what does Warhammer 40,000 actually reward for us? Well, first off, it rewards positional play over tempo. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that many times you don't have to really do much at all. Like, you can just put one unit in a position and let them stay there, and their entire job over the course of the game can be to hold that position. I'll give you a great example that everyone hates. If I have a unit, say I'm playing Adeptus Custodes, and I have a unit of Wardens led by a Blade Champion, and I put them behind an L-shaped ruin so you can't see them, they don't actually ever have to move or leave that position to do their job, because now what they're doing is they're making sure that your opponent can't put any of your valuable things really anywhere, because you can't shoot them because you can't see them, and you can't ever charge them because they just won't die and they'll murder whatever you charge them with. So it creates a huge barrier to your opponent just by having them stuck in a position. So your positional play, not always just following up unit after unit after unit, although tempo does matter. I'm not saying it doesn't. Trading efficiency and not necessarily speed. It's not always all about, hey, how quickly can I hit you? It's about, hey, which unit did I hit you with at what time? This might be a little bit more of a complex thing, which maybe I can flesh out in a later video. But for right now, think, all right, I am willing to trade my 70-point unit of scouts to stop you from getting to move turn 1 because I move blocked your army. But it's not about, I hit you with my scouts first, right? That's not necessarily what it's about, although the speed does actually matter. So you need to, and going along with this is the same concept of timing your aggression and not necessarily spamming it. I don't need to charge you every turn of the game if I can charge you once and overwhelm you in that one turn. This is actually a concept that I teach all the time when I'm talking about my melee pressure armies, whether I'm playing my Blood Angels, my Custodes, my Orcs, it doesn't matter. I talk about the go turn, which is I want to charge 2,000 points of my army into your entire army. I'm going to kill 1,000 points of your army in one go. And then in your turn, you're going to have 1,000 points of your army that's going to have to try to kill all 2,000 points of my army. And that is going to be very, very bad. So you want to really, really time your aggression and not necessarily spam it turn after turn after turn. And then in Warhammer 40,000, you need to be thinking 2 to 3 turns ahead and not just reacting to what your opponent does. I call this the difference between aggressive play and passive play. And I know what the actual definitions of those are, but the way I use those terms in 40k is aggressive play is me dictating the pace of battle. I am determining when my opponent has to go and when my opponent has to score and how aggressive and how forward my opponent has to be moving. Versus passive play, where my opponent is the one who's dictating how I have to play the game, right? You also have to consider really strongly in Warhammer mission control, meaning your primary and your secondary scoring. It does not matter if you kill your opponent at all. As a matter of fact, Warhammer is so different from normal RTSs that the only reason, the exclusive reason to kill your opponent is because they are an impediment towards you scoring points, which is dramatically different than most of the RTSs which people are familiar with. So let me just kind of give you an example of this whole mission control primary scoring thing. If you have a unit that literally does nothing for 3 turns, maybe you just move them up into position and then you just let them sit there for the first 3 turns. And then in round 5, they just advance onto an objective to steal it and flip primary and win the game. That was a very valuable unit, even if they did nothing until round 5 the entire game. So it's about position, guys. And that is just something that's not necessarily always true for RTSs, although I'm not saying position isn't important for RTSs. I can already hear Reddit freaking out. So here's some common mistakes that a lot of our RTS real-time strategy-minded players make. Always advancing and trading instead of screening or delaying. You're sending your units, you're charging, you're trying to kill me. And a lot of times you don't need to kill me, you just need to delay me getting to objectives. So move blocking, things like this is something that a lot of times I see RTS players just not even consider. And it's something that's a very important skill that you're going to have to develop to become a good Warhammer 40,000 player. Throwing away resources too early. Oh, this is such a freaking big one. I see people and they're like, oh, you know what? I have to destroy you now. So they throw away some vital resources very, very early in the game, where if they had just held onto it for an extra turn, it could have been the huge difference. So don't always throw your resources away. It's okay to spend your resources, but you don't want to throw them away. Failing to respect scoring sequence. Brutal, is it? Yes, it is. You score primary at the end of your command phase. And this can cause a lot of problems in the game because people might not have quite touched the objective at the end of their previous turn, which means you're not scoring at the beginning of your next turn, right? So you have to respect scoring sequences. It's not just about killing your opponent. You actually can only score in certain phases of the game as well. Same thing with your secondaries, right? Let's say that I I will score cleanse at the end of the turn. Well, I have to ensure that I control that objective at the end of the turn, right? If my opponent is controlling that objective because they rapid ingress and heroic or did some other shenanigans to have out of phase movement to control the objective, that's a problem. That means that you didn't respect the scoring sequence and you didn't understand when you needed to control the objective. Because if you knew that your opponent could do such a thing, then you never should have started cleanse in the first place. Misjudging board presence versus board control. This is a very, very big deal, okay? I talk about board control a lot in my videos. Board control is you dictating where your opponent can move safely. Board presence is where are your units. Now, they can be related, right? So I could have, let's just say, for example, I have a Land Raider Redeemer, and he's sitting in the middle of the map. And my opponent has a bunch of infantry. Well, I have a board presence in the middle of the map. I also have a board control because if he moves any infantry within 12 inches of that Land Raider Redeemer, I get to annihilate his unit in his turn. So that is an example of what board presence is and board control is. Now, just because you have board presence doesn't necessarily mean you have board control. If I have scouts in the center, my opponent doesn't care. He doesn't care about my scouts at Overwatch, so he might move out because I have no board control, even though I have board presence. So those are two different terms that sometimes can be used at the same time, but many times are used on different times. Focused on killing, not winning. This is a huge one we've talked about already. In Warhammer 40,000, you don't need to kill anything, unless it's like a secondary that you need in order to score, but typically killing is simply a ends to a means. It is removing the impediment towards you scoring. Whereas in RTS is kind of like is the goal. And then misunderstanding tempo in a turn-based context. This is something that we basically already discussed. When I am trying to set you up, I am going to say, okay, I am going to send a first wave. I'm going to send a second wave. I'm going to send a third wave. This could be a tempo play, but a lot of times in Warhammer 40,000, it's better to do it all at once, but lose nothing previously, right? So tempo into RTS just doesn't quite apply towards our Warhammer 40,000 mindset. All right, how to break the habit. This is really important. Practice patience. You got to ask yourself, what happens if I do absolutely nothing this turn? Many times the answer is don't do anything. Whereas in an RTS mindset, you might be freaking out because that means you're not making new units. You're not harvesting new minerals, right? Yeah. Oh gosh, what do they say? Man, I can't remember the what they say when an Exene geyser is out of Exene gas, I think. Whatever, I can't remember. Treat units like your chess pieces, not like zerglings. When you spend a unit or you spend a resource, that resource is now gone. So you have to spend it very wisely. You can't just get a new unit of zerglings. It doesn't work that way. You got to play mission-focused reps, which means you can win the game without killing. And one of the things that I actually really, really recommend a lot of times for people is to see the path to victory without killing, because a lot of times it does happen. Now, you're pretty much always going to have to destroy something in order to achieve your goal, but if you focus more on a scoring mindset, you're going to instantaneously do much better in Warhammer 40,000. What I want you to start doing is track your own bad trades and ask yourself, what were you trying to achieve? If you charged a unit of JPI into, I don't know, a demon prince, were you actually trying to kill that demon prince? Because if you were, you should probably go back to grade school and learn math again, right? So when you make these bad trades or something just doesn't go your way, actually reflect on that and ask yourself, what was the goal of moving my units into that position? What was the goal of my units shooting that rhino? What was the goal of me engaging in this interaction? Because a lot of times what you'll find is that you didn't really have a goal, or your goal was completely unreasonable. Like you were assuming a single squad of assault intercessors was going to like be able to kill Angron or something. Like that's just dumb, right? Not dumb. Yeah, okay, it's dumb. Yeah, let's try to be nice about it. But sometimes we do dumb stuff. I've done dumb stuff, that's for sure. So here's the big 3 questions I want you to ask yourself. And I know this is good advice because this is advice that I give to basically every single client, and it always improves their gameplay. At the beginning of your turn, what I want you to do is I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. And this is going to stop you from making mistakes, and this is going to lead you to success. First off, I want you to ask yourself, what do you have to accomplish? Ooh, just hit my microphone. Sorry about that, guys. What do you have to accomplish this turn, right? What that could be, you have to deny your opponent primary. That can be you have to score a specific secondary. That could be you just simply have to stage behind a certain ruin. Then you ask yourself, what do you want to accomplish this turn? Wants are not have to or must, right? So wants are things like, oh, well, it'd be really nice if I could pick up that carnivore, or it would be really, really nice if I could get an advance to stage in a ruin, right? But you only allowed to do once after you have already achieved your halves, if that makes sense. So if I have to, I don't know, get my Gretchen onto the center objective to score myself area denial, and I know I'm going to need a 3-inch advance to make it happen, for example, well, I might also at the same time really want to advance my truck on my left flank into a ruin. But I'm not going to roll that advance until after I've rolled my Gretchen advance, because I'm good. If I need to spend a CP to re-roll my Gretchen advance, that's where I have to do it, and then I will roll the truck's advance to see if I can, re-roll it or not. So you accomplish what you have to accomplish, then you accomplish what you want to accomplish. Then the third question is, how do you set yourself up for next turn? What are things that you can do to make your next turn much more easy? And this can be as simple as, I'm going to move block my opponent. It can be, hey, I'm just going to charge a unit into my opponent's tanks, not because I expect to kill them, but because I just want to make it so that the tanks can't really move next turn. Things like that, right? So in recap, guys, Warhammer is not about doing the most things. It's about doing the right thing at the right time. And just so you know, here's a picture of 2 adorable pups, because everyone needs pictures of adorable puppies in their lives. It's just the way it is. So what I want you to really, really do is I want you to start rethinking your instincts, especially if you're coming from these RTSs or these fast-paced games, because sometimes you need to slow down. And trust me, if you're too slow, that's a whole nother issue, and I've got an entire video dedicated to that. Maybe it's about time that I update it. So maybe we'll get to that. Now, what RTS habits did you have to unlearn when you started playing Warhammer 40,000? I want to hear about it in the comments down below. And if you have any other tips of breaking those habits besides the ones I've posted here today, let me know. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. So with that, guys, I'm going to take off. Happy cropping. Have a great day. Bye.